Hello, ICASSI! The topic of today's lecture is the art of encouragement. I decided to dedicate this lecture to one of the leaders of ICASSI, Bill Linden, who passed away this year. After joining the ICASSI staff 20 years ago, this is the first ICASSI for me without my friend. Several years ago, I was fortunate that Bill joined the course that I gave on the art of encouragement. As part of the exercise, the group was asked to share a personal story, and so did Bill. I don't remember the details of the story, but the emotion that the group felt and the tears that fell on Bill's face, I can still see it now. I asked the group to encourage Bill. And here sat a man, 85 years old, with a group of people whose average age was less than half of his. He heard their attempts to encourage him in English, in which some of the group used Google Translate, being from different countries. Bill wanted to help them learn the art of encouragement with patience, with respect, with appreciation, and in a heavy atmosphere. Suddenly, he stood in the center of the room, motioned to a young woman from Japan who had difficulty finding the appropriate words to come and hug him. And with a hand gesture, asked for another one to join the hug. And then another one, until a circle was formed of cohesive group, and in the center, a smiling face, maybe happy, and with teary eyes. I could not find at that moment a better illustration, more exact example of the idea standing at the basis of the course, the art of encouragement. What would Bill do? What Bill would have done today with the social distance rules? I am sure that with his great sense of humor and his creative personality, he would have come up with a useful solution. I miss you, Bill. And so we do live in a new social situation. The COVID-19 has put us in a new experience, and it is interesting to check some of our psychological principles during the period of change. That is what we will do today with the term of encouragement. Last month, in order to prepare this lecture, I asked some friends and clients two questions. What was hard for them during the time of quarantine? And what was it that encouraged them? I did not explain the term encouragement, assuming that each one has an idea of what encouragement is. Interestingly, in over 30 years of studying, reading, writing, and teaching encouragement, I have not found a single definition that would include the complexity as well as the simplicity of these words. Therefore, I formed this definition by collecting words and parts of sentences from Hebrew and English to create an integrated definition. This is my definition and the one that we will be using in this talk. So encouragement is strengthening a person's spirit and thereby creating change in one's perception of one's self, improving one's opinion of one's self, increasing the confidence in one's strengths, and bringing one to the conclusion that he is good and worthy as he is. The definition does not fully tell us what encouragement is. Encouragement is more than that. Encouragement, in my opinion, is an art. Like in any art, there are some preconditions involved in the art itself and with the person making it. Luckily, Netflix came on time with The Last Dance, when all sports fans had nothing else to watch, and we got to know one of the greatest artists of sports. So I watched for 2 weeks back and forth the artist Michael Jordan and how he transformed sport into art. Also, the first cultural event that we went to going out of quarantine was the life of Van Gogh. There are some similarities in any art and also in the way that the great artists work. The first thing that came into my mind was their dedication and investment. The time and the endless hours of practice until they reached the level of perfection should be remembered by anyone who wants to master in art, and specifically in the art of encouragement. It is impossible to teach someone to encourage, but everyone can learn to encourage. In order to encourage, one needs to learn and practice. Learn these principles of encouragement and spend the rest of your life practicing until it is part of your lifestyle. Encouragement will be judged by the results. Is he encouraged or not? The final result and final outcome of the art is unique creative combination of studying, practice, talent, and humanity. It is true for any art, and it is true for encouragement as well. The reason that I mentioned it came from my experience. Watching the masters, my teachers in the Adler Institute in Israel, and the teacher like Bill in the ICASSI, I was wondering, how do they encourage others so easily? How do they find the right words and gestures? Would I be able to do it too? That thought by itself can be very discouraging. During the years, I got the answer. I cannot encourage like them, but I can encourage. And I can even teach the principle. No one can draw like Van Gogh, but everyone can draw. So let's start to go through the principles. These principles are not built in a hierarchical manner, and like the complete Adlerian approach, they are solid unit, holistic, with the goal of raising the individual worth through real sharing and belief in abilities. We talk about them separately for teaching method only, but when practicing, we use some principles together. When I teach encouragement, I like to start with the principle stating that accepting the individual as he is without conditions. Every individual, including ourselves, is good enough as he is. And in this way, we must value him. According to the Adlerian psychology, the individual creates his personality in a dialogue within his environment during the early years. Every individual has a capacity for unique creativity to interpret the circumstances in which he lives. Easy to say, but very hard to do. It is almost obvious to say that we have to accept any individual as he is or as she is. But how can I accept her when she is never on time? How can I accept her when she never passes by the store without buying? How can I accept her when she never remembers to fill the car with gas? Never stop talking with her mom on the telephone. And you can add more things. I don't have to accept all those behaviors. But if there is a situation that I want to encourage her, I have to forget all the above and accept the person with all her faults. Like that, I expect her to accept me with my faults. This is a precondition to encouragement. Then comes the mutual respect. This means not hurting, not degrading, and not humiliating. Mutual respect is attained by listening and accepting the fact that there are differences of opinion and positions, and that the differences is not hindrance to the society, but an advantage that enrich our lives. Mutual respect is part of the first principle. Often in couple therapy, they say to each other, "You should accept me as I am." "Oh yeah? You should accept me first." In having this short dialogue, they hurt each other, like they do frequently at home, and they humiliate each other. In order to encourage each other, they need to stop blaming and rather respect one another. In order to make a change, it needs one to start the new path. It needs two or more to give feedback from mutual respect. And then we come to another principle, emphasizing on the positive. Putting an emphasis on what is and not what lacks. Despite the difficulty in doing this, in every reality there is always something positive. Even if we can hardly find it, emphasizing it, small and minor as it may be, will point to the strengths and not to the weaknesses, providing a base for growth. Many people already accepted this idea. We all have heard phrases about the glass half full. However, it takes more effort than trying not to see what is lacking. We need to change the position of observation. If we see the full half, it means that there is another half. In relationship, if I want to encourage, I need to see only the positive for the purpose of encouragement. Yotam used the example of showing the toddler the one tiny spot around his plate that was left clean, to acknowledge the effort to keep the table clean by the toddler. So recognizing the effort is another one. In a world in which an individual is tested every day by his success, there is a great importance to self-value. If an individual knows that she invested all of her potential, even if the outcome is not the best, her effort is good enough. This principle is true for everyone, but it is especially important when we want to encourage young people. Young children are still in the process of creating their lifestyle. They have to develop a good image of themselves, and therefore they depend a lot on the feedback they receive. Michael Jordan said that people see how much he scores during the game, but they don't know how many hours he has been practicing and missing shots during those hours. Another principle, decreasing the importance of mistakes. And derived from that is decreasing the fear of making mistakes. In a world of criticism, there is a great anxiety and fear of making mistakes. because the criticism is usually directed to the person making the mistakes. And this hurts his self-value as a capable individual. In encouragement, it is necessary to emphasize that a mistake is a basis for a new learning and improvement. Why do so many people around us, especially among those who really care for our welfare and happiness, why do they emphasize on showing us that we were wrong and where we made the mistake? They do it for our good. They really believe that we will learn if they will show us our mistakes. They are wrong. They lower our self-esteem, and later on some people stop trying from that fear of making a mistake. That brings us to progressing gradually. Every individual has his own rhythm, an ability to progress, the demand to progress quickly according to the strict external criteria brings individuals to hopelessness, despair, and to the mistaken concept of incapability and then failure. Gradual progress with short-term goals provides recognition of capability and feeling of success. If we want to encourage, and you probably noticed that I already used this phrase before, but if we want to encourage, so we don't have to encourage all the time, but if we do, we have to recognize and respect the difference between people. Last week, in couple counseling, I asked a man, do you want your wife to be the rabbit while she moves like the turtle? And with a big smile over his face, he said, yes. So you see where they are stuck. Another principle, enable other people to take responsibility. In this way, we are passing a message to the individual that we count on him and that we recognize his ability. It is not our intention to avoid our responsibility, like many people tend to blame the Adlerians. But we want to teach and prepare the individual in small steps to be responsible throughout the course of his life. Some people mistakenly want to give the responsibility to someone else. This doesn't work. We need to let go. And by doing so, we allow other person to take the responsibility. And we have to believe truthfully and deeply in the other person. An individual who feels that others believe in him and in his abilities, an individual who knows that others are depending on him, receive a lot of power. So let's get back now to the question that I asked and the answer that I received and examined them according to the principles of encouragement. This is not an easy task. The principles that I have written teach people how to encourage others. However, we were quarantined, so there is no immediate encourager for the encouragement. So the question were, what was hard for you during time of quarantine? And what encouraged you? Many people replied that they were afraid from getting infected from the virus and being ill. Others shared their great fear from the unknown. What will be in the future? What helped them? Some of the examples of the answers that I got were that we were being very busy with many different activities. Others said, teaching and studying online helped me. For most of the people that answered me, the hardest part, as could be easily assumed, was being alone and feeling lonely. What helped them? Most of them were using all forms of communication, mainly the newest Zoom application, as well as calling friends and relatives. And many people said that they listened to various lectures, as well as learning cooking and baking and whatever was online. Another response that I got, mainly from older people, that suddenly no one needed them. They started to feel useless, and they could not be part of the contributing community. More than that, they felt that they became a burden on others, and someone else has to take care of them. What helped them in that situation? Most of them said that not much helped them. People started to feel depressed, but I asked again, what did help you? Some said that the long perspective on their lives, the hardship that they went through and got out of it, and the hope for a change soon. Some people said that the situation in which they did not have an income was their main fear and concern. What helped them? The care and the love from their friends and family, and their generosity were the most important. When I examined those answers to what helped and encouraged the people, I saw that none of the principles that I mentioned before, or maybe only very little of them, were there. Well, there are some more principles that we didn't talk about yet. One of them is facilitating a feeling of belonging. The feeling of belonging gives meaning to our lives and recognizes our strengths. It guarantees our place. An individual who feels that he belongs is able to deal with the task of life, even on crises like the COVID-19 virus. And another thing was sharing and cooperating. The connection created between people based on commonalities, field of interests, goals, values, or ideology is a facilitator of sharing among equals, in which all have value and contribution. These two principles often are not listed as part of the encouraging process because they are so basic for individual psychology of Adler. But if we can learn something from the COVID-19, it is that people are not doing well while they are quarantined. People need to belong. They need the feeling of contributing to the community. Even in crisis situation like that, people who know how to share and people who are not depending on others to feel worthy have a greater chance to overcome any hardship. So if we go back to the definition of encouragement that I started the lecture with, we can see how important it is to teach and learn all the principles, how to encourage. It is even more so for parents and teachers. Adler and Dreikurs started to do it more than 100 years ago, and we have to continue. Thank you very much, and see you all in Morocco next year.